everybody. Welcome to a belated edition of the Atheist Experience. I'm your host, Matt Dillahunty. Joining me this week, Russell Glasser.
Hi.
We are live. It's Sunday, April 1st. No, this wasn't an extravagant April Fool's Day joke to have you tune in at 4:30 only to see a Mormon conference. Actually, they preempt us twice a year for reasons that none of us can understand. Some deal they've got with the cable company with regard to public access. I don't know. Normally we sit around for about 20 or 30 minutes and poke fun at them in their special underwear, but today we're not going to do that at all. As I said, we're live. This is a call-in public access television program sponsored by the atheist community of Austin, giving the atheists in the Austin area the chance to communicate with the public, answer questions, debate beliefs, discuss issues that are relevant to the separation of church and state. The ACA has weekly meetings every Sunday at Ventana del Sol on East Old Torf, just a couple blocks east of I-35. That begins at 11:30, except for the first Sunday of the month when we host a lecture series at the Austin History Center located at the corner of 9th and Guadalupe. That's completely tossed out the window for the month of April. It's actually the third Sunday of the month that we'll be hosting a lecture series. And this month we have Lori Lippman Brown coming down. She is the lobbyist for, I think, the Secular Coalition, coming down to speak to us. The audio portion of this program is available for download from the ACA website, www.atheist-community.org, and the video portion of the program is now being uploaded to Google Video. You can go to Google Video and search for Atheist Experience, or you can go to atheist-experience.com, go into the archives, scroll down to the bottom where it lists every episode, and there'll be a link there labeled video that'll take you to it so that you can watch it there. In addition to this program, the ACA also sponsors a bi-weekly internet audio podcast called The Nonprofits. That's Prophets. We will be live again next Saturday, which will be the 7th? 8th?
Yeah, I didn't check. Today's the 1st.
It'll be up there, but yeah, today's the 1st.
7th.
So. I'm supposed to check my mic. I thought we'd check the mics before we went in there. If you can't hear me, then I guess Russell could talk. So.
Luckily, nobody's watching right now because they've been, they got left when the Mormons came on.
Yeah, they all.
But people are listening to the podcast.
So, can anybody hear me or not? That's the question I've got. Get back to me on that. Until then, I'm going to keep on rambling and maybe talk loud enough that you can hear me through Russell's microphone. Who knows? The ACA says, in addition to the weekly meetings of both programs, the ACA is a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. In addition to the various other meetings, we have social events throughout the month. Every Thursday is Atheist Happy Hour, currently at Ninfa's on Anderson near 183 and I-35. And after this program's over, we're on the air until 6 o'clock. Somewhere around 6:30, we get together and go downtown to Threadgill's on Riverside. So I tell you what, I'm going to hold off on the rest of the announcements while I figure out what's wrong with my microphone. And we'll just go ahead and let Russell get started with our April 1st education
extravaganza. Actually, I was just going to continue something that I started 2 months ago. I was starting to do sort of a series on evolution. Got a little sidetracked last month because somebody asked me what's it like to be an atheist parent, and that episode and the one before it are now up on Google Video, which you can check out for a refresher. But this is actually a pretty good topic for April Fool's Day because it's the subject of some of the really, really bad creationist arguments that are out there. Now, I realize that creationism has gotten kind of sophisticated since the 90s, and I'll be going more into that later, but for this month, we're just going to hit the funny ones. Also, I think Matt said that we're going to open up the lines to phones as soon as possible. So it's possible that I may not even get to this entire topic today, in which case maybe I'll continue it next month.
Yeah, we can go ahead and put the number up. And I do have one correction to make. Thursday's happy hour is no longer at Memphis. Starting this Thursday, we'll be going to the Dog and Duck Pub downtown.
Oh.
So there'll be more information at the website, or you can email. And anybody who doesn't get through on the phone today or doesn't want to can also email tv@atheist-community.org. Everybody involved with the show gets that email address, and we'll answer it as we can.
Right. By the way, I wonder if we have a lot of Mormons watching now who don't usually watch.
I doubt it.
I don't
If I
know.
was a Mormon, there's no way I would have watched all of that conference.
Yeah, really.
No way.
You know, we were looking on the screen in the middle, and I was like, you know, you don't have to be told that guy is a Mormon. Just that very, very white guy with gray hair and a suit. Look, I couldn't even hear him, but I'm sure it was very boring. You can just tell. And now we've got all the angry Mormons calling in. Sorry, not really. It is April Fool's Day, of course, and there was kind of an amusing April Fool's joke pulled off on a blog, which a lot of us atheists read, over at Pharyngula and Panda's Thumb, which are both evolution-based blogs. They've been focusing a lot in the last few months on a character named Michael Egnor, who I believe he says he's a neurosurgeon and he's an evolution skeptic, and you know how much creationists love people who have any kind of credentials whatsoever, saying silly things about evolution. So this Michael Egnor has been saying all kinds of ridiculous things on behalf of the Discovery Institute, who's been posting his ramblings, and some of our favorite bloggers like PZ Myers have been writing long, ranty posts, picking apart everything he says piece by piece, and calling him Michael Ignorance and silly names like that. Today, Panda's Thumb and Pharyngula both had a link to a site or a page that was ostensibly on the Discovery Institute's blog, which is evolutionnews.org. Go figure. And so I'll read some of that post from the Discovery Institute. It says, wow, we do have full lines. The Mormons are mad at me. Or else people are really eager to talk about creationism. It says, Happy April Fools, or Dawkins Day, as some of you might know it. Over the past month, I have engaged in what my friend Bill Dembski lucidly refers to as street theater. My posts here have been, and this is supposedly from Michael Egnor, I guess. My posts here have been an outlandish parody of the bona fide intelligent design position, liberally injected with many of the more simplistic errors of the young Earth creationists. My purpose was to see how far we could go before the gullible Darwinists realized that they were being taken for a ride. The Discovery Institute has graciously aided and abetted by allowing me a voice on this weblog and by giving me valuable feedback on my comedic input. Our ruse was bound to work. After all, Darwinists eagerly want to believe that intelligent design is nothing but dressed-up creationism. However, I'm astounded we made it this far, as I truly feared that the Darwinian horde would catch on sooner. But they're even denser than we expected. So he's out there trumpeting the fact that he was acting like an ignorant buffoon, and people apparently couldn't tell the difference between him and the intelligent design crowd. Ha ha, gotcha.
Yeah, nobody thought enough to declare Poe's law on him.
Right. The Discovery Institute and I hope you have enjoyed our game. As Bill Dembski has said, we should strive to be more fun at parties. But on a serious note, and with apologies to Sir Ronald Fisher, intelligent design is not creationism, although apparently bloggers can't tell the difference. Well, that was supposedly the joke, but actually, in an astounding double reversal, actually the joke is on the readers. Because Michael Egnor actually is very real, as far as I can tell. This site was posted at evolutionnews.net, not .org, which I think is a new site that was just registered, and it spoofs the Discovery Institute. So what I think happened is that PZ Myers and the rest of the bloggers created a fake site so that they could pretend that this Dr. Egnor was actually an elaborate hoax, when in fact he's real and just as silly as he appears. If you didn't catch all that the first time, check out the Atheist Experience blog, atheistexperience.blogspot.com, where I posted basically an explanation of the whole joke, and ruined the joke in the process, because, you know, explaining a joke always ruins it. So, sorry guys.
Yeah, well, it's kind of cool because so often, I mean, we've talked about how Poe's law, and Poe's law, for those of you who aren't familiar,
I'm not familiar.
Is the idea, it's another one of those internet chat type laws. It's the idea that there is no concept in religion that is so absurd that you can distinguish it from a parody of itself.
Right.
So when you see these people like at the website Fundies Say the Darndest Things, which is fstdt.
Yeah. Now that's my blog on the screen, but actually the post is on atheistexperience.blogspot.com.
Yeah,
but thanks for plugging me.
But so when you see somebody saying something completely outrageous, like I don't know, evolution, who knows? I can't even come up with anything off the top of my head that's so absurd. That you cannot distinguish between whether this is something that somebody's making fun of creationists or whether this is a real creationist claim. So this kind of plays on that inability to distinguish between the two.
Right. When I was a kid, my father, who had obviously never heard of Poe's Law yet, put it to me in almost exactly the same way. And I think the words he used were, think of the most incredible, outrageous, outlandish belief you can possibly imagine. Somewhere in the world, somebody believes that strongly enough to die for it.
Yeah.
So anyway, even if Michael Egnor had been a hoax, which also would have been kind of funny, but not very, because, as Matt just said, it's really hard to tell the difference between somebody pretending to be a stupid buffoon and somebody actually being a stupid buffoon. And it's not that much of a good trick to demonstrate that. So we do have, I guess, nearly full lines now. And I don't need to go, we're half an hour short. I don't need to start on my topic.
We'll go ahead and start taking calls. The phone lines are open. You guys can call in. As a reminder, anybody who doesn't get through or doesn't want to can email tv@atheist-community.org. And if we lose callers, whatever, we'll go back to what Russell was talking about. We got Phil, you there?
Yes, I am.
How you doing?
Just fine. Unfortunately, I did miss that first half hour of my daily ritual.
Nah.
But
well, you didn't really miss anything because we weren't there.
Well, you guys are still uber cool, so I'll let it go at that. Mr. Glasser, Mr. Russell Glasser.
Yes.
The reason I'm calling, I wanted to talk a little bit about Judaism and state of Israel and foreign policy. Your beloved and beautiful sister, who I say with no disrespect at all, she's a wonderful woman, Karen, I believe her name is.
Yes.
She alluded at some point, probably about 4 or 5 months ago, that she was going to come in and hopefully give us a dissertation on why we should be so nice to Israel at the expense of everybody else.
Okay,
now,
hold on. My opinions on Israel are probably more nuanced than hers were at the time, and I think her views on it are probably also more nuanced than they were at the time. I think many of the people I talk to, a lot of the secular Jews, have a very ambiguous sort of perspective on Israel, and I think the typical conservative position is to be obsessively in favor of Israel because eventually the rapture will come there, or the end of times will start being signaled over there.
Among other flimsy explanations, yes.
Yeah. Well, why don't you go ahead and I'll.
Well, I've been waiting with bated breath when Karen's going to come on and tell us why we should favor Israel. She says that she's an atheist, as you yourself do.
Yeah.
But she also says she's a Jew, and I understand. I respect both positions. But what I don't understand is how she, and I know she's not there and she can't defend herself, but she was going to come on and hopefully explain to me, the most dubious me, on why we should have this ridiculous foreign policy that we have.
And you want me to be her proxy?
I want you to tell me if, in fact, she's going to come on and explain that to me, and if there's any other reason why the United States foreign policy should be so heavily favored towards Judaism and Israel.
I'm not aware of any plans she has right now to come back on the show.
All right, guys. Well, I'll let you go with that. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Bill.
I guess I can play Israeli advocate for a minute, but I don't want to get the impression that I am one of these neocons who thinks that we should support Israel at all costs. I I've read a couple of books on the subject, and I really still don't understand it. So this isn't something I feel as comfortable arguing about as, say, creationism. But I guess I can sum it up, and you can call back later if you want and talk about this. But, I mean, I can sum up my sort of pro-Israeli points as basically, when you read about the history of Judaism, there is a whole lot of anger and persecution, not just in the 20th and 21st centuries, but sort of throughout history. I mean, you know, there were pogroms and inquisitions and things like that, and a lot of that happened because Jews at various times in history were somewhat successful. And I don't want to say that that's because of some kind of genetic predisposition to be successful, but simply mainly because Judaism doesn't have the same laws against doing some things that make you successful, like money lending. So there's a lot of sort of tribal hatred of Judaism in the Middle East. And Israel was basically set up as a haven. Now, there were a lot of shady things that happened during the time while Israel was set up, but basically, from my reading, it seems like Israel is sort of an island of modernity in a sea of lots and lots of people who really are kind of stuck in a Middle Ages mentality. And that's a scary situation for them to be in, and there's an argument to be made about protecting them from a bunch of surrounding countries that want to wipe them off the face of the map. Having said that, now that they're in power in that part of the world, there are a lot of things that they're doing that qualify as abuses of power, and that's about as much as I'm comfortable about saying, because I'm really not an expert on this topic.
Yeah, neither one of us are. I know that there have been other shows on public access that talked about the issue with Israel and Palestine and other areas. And that's kind of beyond the scope of the atheist experience.
I notice. I'll just say that liberals like myself seem to tend to be anti-Israel, but liberal Jews seem to tend to sort of temper that with a little bit of pro-Israel. So what can I say?
We got Tony. How you doing?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
Hi.
All right. Just to touch on the first caller's comment on why I think America is so partial to Israel, and this is from my research. I've done a lot of research for about 15 years now, and the reason that happens, it goes a lot deeper than just religion. It begins to go into the governments and how it all works out. The reason that America is so partial to Israel is because the government knows certain things that they don't want society to find out. And
like what?
If you go and you read certain parts of the Bible, because the only Bible that America knows is the Bible that the government allows them to have.
What?
Yeah.
Really?
Have you ever been to BibleGateway.com?
No, I haven't.
Because there are like 20 different translations.
Oh, I know that. That's why I'm trying to inform you guys.
And we have lots of 3rd and 4th century documents, and
right.
people and scholars are studying this all the time.
Right.
So you're saying there's some hidden Bible that we're not allowed to see?
Oh, there's lots of hidden things.
Not even worth the time.
You got to come up with something stronger than that. April Fools. I'm going to go ahead and assume that you don't really believe that and that you were trying to joke me, because if you're serious, you're going to actually need to present some evidence and not come on making conspiratorial claims about hidden Bibles. It's just not going to fly.
I mean, it's not even a matter of whether you trust the government or not. I think it's a matter of, it's not even really all that possible to disguise this kind of information. First of all, the Bible has never actually belonged to the American government.
Yeah.
And second of all, there is the internet.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that was a joke. But go ahead and we're going to keep the lines open. We'll get The screeners are back there listening so that you can call in, talk about this subject or any other subject. But
You know,
we'll go ahead
it's
and do that.
weird. I gotta make some meta comment, but a long time ago, we used to have a lighter background, and I noticed that my light clothes always disappeared into the background, which is why I always wear dark clothes, and today my body is invisible.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a headless, the head floating in air. So, sorry. Amateur hour on ACTV.
Luckily, it's only an hour.
Yes.
Yeah. Obviously,
Right.
with the
Rather
preemption.
than an hour and a half.
So you've
amateur hour.
got some bad creationist
Okay.
arguments. Let's hit a few of them.
Let's hit a few.
Because
of
I
them.
mean, you know, we talk a lot about, you know, you're bringing in a number of topics on evolution,
Right.
And the last month we talked about why evolution and atheism sometimes get linked together in some people's minds.
Yeah, and that was 2 months ago. You should go back and listen to that show so you will know why I'm talking about this.
But we often get accused of, you know, we don't want to be arguing against caricatures of religion, and certainly these young Earth creationists
Well,
aren't the majority opinion.
We're
but it's good to rebut their
we're told that young Earth creationists are totally different from people like the intelligent design movement. But I know for a fact that some of the intelligent design community have actually been extremely waffly when asked about what they really think the age of the Earth is. So I'm not all that convinced that the intelligent design guys aren't just young Earth creationists, many of them, who have learned better lingo. But the reason the topic today is bad creationist arguments, none of them are really good. But these ones are so bad that even a lot of other creationists laugh at them. So first I'm going to go over the sort of general method of creating a creationist argument, and it's called the argument from incredulity. I think that might actually have been coined by Richard Dawkins, but I'm not sure.
No.
No? Okay.
much older.
All right. Well, let's see. I actually created an article on argument from authority, or argument from incredulity, on ironchariots.org yesterday, just to prepare for this topic. And basically, the argument from personal incredulity is fairly simple, and it goes like this. You're going to tell me that, people evolved from apes? Why, that's really hard to believe. So rather than go and research it, I will just say that it sounds ridiculous to me, and since I can't understand it, it can't be true. That's basically what a lot of arguments boil down to, is if it's really complicated and most people can't understand it, then it must not be true. That is also, even apart from evolution and creation issue, it is used often as a proof of the existence of God. Like, for instance, God, okay, look at this big, wonderful world. Look at all the trees and birdies and things like love that we can't understand. That's all very complicated, and it couldn't possibly have just gotten here. So there must have been a super intelligent being who started it all. So there's a couple of problems with the argument from incredulity. One is, even if you don't understand a topic like evolution, often you'll find that a lot of other people in the world who actually study it for a living do understand it a lot better than you do. And when you think that the mechanisms behind evolution aren't understood very well, it could be because you just haven't bothered to read. Other times, we really don't understand, speaking as the human race here, how something happened, like, for instance, how the universe came into existence. But when we don't understand something, that's not an excuse to plug in your favorite answer, which, by the way, also has absolutely no evidence behind it, and just make something up to fill in the gaps. So that's the argument from incredulity. All right, so now I'm going to quickly go through 3 very silly misconceptions about evolution. The first one is that people say evolution is only a theory. That is, of course, true. Evolution is a theory. It's also a fact.
You know, I mentioned this morning when we were meeting at Ventana del Sol. Last night I watched Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth. And in the middle of it, he talked about how, and provided documentation from the people who were trying to poo-poo global warming.
Right.
And they used this strategy that let's set it up as a theory. Let's create doubt. Let's talk about how there's this big controversy.
Yes.
So this has happened with the global warming issue. This happened in the 60s with cigarette smoke, where the tobacco conglomerates got together and said, we're going to produce this area of doubt.
Right.
And it also happens with creationism, even you can dress it up as intelligent design, but it's the exact same thing they're doing. Evolution's only a theory. There's this controversy. Scientists reject it. And that's why we brought up Project
there's a typical kind of stalling tactic which works across the board, which is when they can't prove that something is wrong, they take advantage of the fact that all scientific subjects naturally have doubt involved in them, and they play up the amount of doubt that's out there, and make it so that from actually we don't understand the details of what's happening over here to we have no idea how life works.
Yeah.
Which just isn't true. Now, the word theory in scientific parlance basically means a very well-tested explanation for why facts happen. A theory is not an observation that hasn't been graduated to a fact. The words theory and fact are different from each other. In sort of colloquial lingo, the word theory, just in everyday talk, means a guess.
Yeah.
That's not what it means in science. In science, a theory is something that has been tested and understood and is no longer a hypothesis and explains a set of facts. So, our caller hung up. Okay,
Yeah.
I can keep going.
Which is fine, because I didn't want to go back down into the Israel issue. So
Yeah,
let's
he
just-
wanted to talk about Israel some more. I don't know. Okay, the next one is,
By the way,
yes.
we'll come right back to that. Last week I set out a challenge to everybody at the end of the show to ask their preachers or whatever and come up with an explanation for the passage in 2 Kings, or for you Catholics that'd be 4th Kings, because you got the crazy Bible. And I didn't get a single email response. Nobody wanted to take up the challenge. I'm going to do another challenge at the end of today's show, but as a reminder, I don't want to say that there's no good answer to this, but it appears that there is no good answer to that. So.
Let's see, that's the story of the bears, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and the question is basically, why would God be such a lunatic as to kill 42 children? Just for making fun of a prophet.
That's one of the questions, yeah. But, so we got more on bad creationist arguments.
We're still talking about evolution as a concept, and the next one that people bring up is that evolution is a theory of chance, where they say something like, you believe in evolution? What, are you saying that we just got here by accident? Well, no. Chance really doesn't cover what happens in natural law. Like, for instance, when you drop something and it falls down, you can't really say that it just accidentally went down instead of up, because there's something called gravity, which tends to move something in a particular direction, which is toward the nearest heavy mass. And the universe doesn't work strictly by chance, meaning that something completely random isn't likely to happen, like a vase of flowers is going to pop up right in front of me in any second now. That would be something that happens totally by chance. Things obeying the natural laws of the universe doesn't happen by chance.
And
evolution.
That's a good example in that,
Yeah.
though, with what you're talking about with something falling. If you took like a pen and flung it as hard as you could up in the air, it's going to spin and twist and flip all over the place in such a chaotic fashion that it looks complex and may appear to some to be chance, may appear to some, but the parabola the arc that it describes
Is
as
very
it goes across
well described by
is
the
well
laws of
described.
physics.
Right. So you've got natural laws acting on something which, at a glimpse, from one myopic viewpoint, may look chaotic, or it may look ordered in some sense,
Yeah.
depending on how you view it. But it's not chance. Chance doesn't describe anything that happens with that pen from the time I let it go until it lands.
Right. Now, evolution has three components, and actually one of them is indeed chance, which is random mutations happen, or actually variation within a species, where, you know, people on average are about 5 feet 8 inches tall. But there's variation within that. So there are you know, a lot of people who are 6 feet tall, a lot of people who are 5 feet tall. Occasionally there are people who are 7 feet tall and they play basketball. And occasionally there are very short people. But you know, there are no 2 feet, or there are no 2-inch tall people, and there are no 100 feet tall people, and it all happens within a range, and that's variation. Now, evolution says that basically there is natural selection, which means that if there's something that comes through and kills tall people a lot more than short people, then on average the population will move in a particular direction, which is they will get shorter. And that's the basic premise of evolution, and that is, believe it or not, very small changes being acted on by selection are what account for the kinds of amazing things that we've seen generated, like, for instance, the eye. Creationists like to say that Darwin was completely stumped by the eye, and they quote something out of context where he said, you know, you know, it seems absurd to believe that the eye could have developed through small variations. But what they don't quote is the next part where he says, but actually, here's how it could have happened. And he goes through and provides a step-by-step sequence of how each stage in the eye's evolution is more developed than the last. And this was expanded on by Richard Dawkins in his great book, Climbing Mount Improbable. And basically the point I'm trying to get across here is that evolution is sort of a force that pulls things in a particular direction through well-understood natural laws, and there are a lot of things that have benefited from the study of evolution, like developing programs through evolutionary algorithms where we basically let the program rewrite its own program, and various medical and agricultural technologies. So evolution isn't a theory of chance.
Let's we'll go ahead and pause for a minute and take another call real quick. We've got Sue. How you doing?
Hi, gentlemen. I hope you're doing well today.
I'm doing pretty good.
I'm doing fine, thanks.
What I just heard you say actually altered my topic just a little bit, because on a side note, if you look at the variation of eyes, from spiders to people to fish that live in caves, you realize that it is definitely, it has to do with the environment that the creature lives in as to what sort of adaptations the eye takes.
Right, and you can find creatures...
I think it more proves it than disproves it.
Right, and you can find creatures that have all kinds of different eyes at various stages of development. So it's not really that absurd to think that there are lots of different stages that the eye can go through with different kinds of benefits.
And there are some eyes which we would look at and say are better
than ours. Like squid?
And the fact that we don't even see everything. There are things we can't see. As far as like the spectrum, we don't see below a certain kind of light, and we don't see above it. Right. Just like hearing, we can't hear really low or really high. So there's things that, our eyes could still change. We don't know where our eyes will end. But that's not really why I called.
Okay.
Okay.
I was reflecting recently on how, as often happens, that art imitates the world that we live in. For example, right after the millennium change, we had all of those TV shows about the recurrence of Christ and the Christ baby and all of things like that.
Yeah.
I've noticed that creationism and subjects along those lines have started to become kind of deep in some of our popular TV. For example, the other night I was watching a Law and Order where the perpetrator, and you know how they say ripped from the headlines? Well, do you remember that minister that was a minister for the White House that was also gay, but he was anti-gay, and he got
I remember
caught,
him well.
And Haggard or something, I'm not sure his name.
Yeah,
it was
it's
kind
Ted
of based
Haggard.
on him. But he, there was a murder. He didn't do it, but there was a murder, and he thought someone that he knew did it, and so he was trying to cover up. And the reason he gave for having murdered the person was he was a science teacher, and he was teaching his daughter evolution, and his daughter wrote a paper that was supposed to be on Darwin, and instead it was on intelligent design, and he failed her. And supposedly the father thought that her soul would be damned to hell, and that God could come along and throw a stray bullet at her from a drive-by, or she could get AIDS.
What?
God's doing drive-bys now. He's graduated from lightning
He had to
and
kill her, you
blade.
know,
God's
to
a
save her.
gangsta.
So this was like on an episode of Law and Order or something. You said?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
Law and Order. It was like, I thought, you know, that means that it's being talked about among the people because of the fact that it's now into the popular culture, because that's how art works.
I think a lot of
Television
people.
art, I know, is a little dubious, but it is. It is art. And the thing that I found the most disturbing, however, is that he was supposedly part of a group of people that not only were rapturites, but also something called rejuvenators. And they go by the idea that we have to go forth and multiply. And so that particular family had 9 children. And it never even occurred to me that there might be a group of people that thought that way. And, I mean, the Catholics used to back in, like, the 50s and 60s, and then they decided that whether the Pope agreed with birth control or not, they were going to use it.
Yeah.
So we used to have huge Catholic families, but I honestly thought that wasn't something they did. And it kind of frightens me that what I consider the crazies are choosing to make huge families. That kind of frightens me. I'm not sure if there's any truth because it was a fiction show.
Yeah.
But it's like a thought that, I don't know.
Kind of in what we were talking about earlier, I can guarantee you somebody out there believes that.
Yeah.
It's
And
almost a certainty.
If you want to be even more scared and also entertained, you should rent Mike Judge's movie Idiocracy, which sort of plays on that theme and imagines a future where stupid people breed out of control and take over the entire world.
Oh, gosh. I have seen the movie Marjo.
Okay.
Which was one of my first eye-openers to, okay, evangelists are all full of you-know-what. Because he was sitting at people's tables saying, and they were saying, we love it when you come through because you're just the best. And then they show scenes of him in hotel rooms throwing money up in the air. It's a great movie.
Yeah, I think it won an Academy Award.
It is great.
I'm pretty sure it won an Academy Award, but I'd have to check with my friend Schilling in the back there, who would probably know the answer to that. Yeah, I have it, thanks to him. And it was a really, really good kind of expose on that sort of tent revivalist, evangelist type scenario.
Well, thanks for talking with me. I could let you take more callers, but
sure.
I love this show. I don't often miss it. I have missed it a couple of weeks.
Well, it's obvious that you're one of the better viewers because we were preempted for 30 minutes and you still managed to find us. So
I checked and I thought, well, Palm Sunday, maybe it's just. Are we having an Easter show?
No. What's happening is the Mormons do a semi-annual conference, first Sunday of April and the first Sunday of October. They run all day long, and they're always going to chop off the first 30 minutes of our show, at least until I find who I need to raise hell with.
Okay, so there won't be a show on Easter, or will there?
Yeah, I'm expecting us to have a show on Easter. I don't know. I haven't heard anything about us being preempted. I just haven't got anything special planned for Easter.
Okay, well, it's next week. So.
Is it? See, I don't remember.
Okay.
I don't either. I just realized today was Palm Sunday when I was watching some newscast. And
If I don't get to take off work for the holiday, I probably don't care that much. But thanks for the reminder then.
Well, have a good show, guys.
Okay.
Thanks a lot, Sue.
What good is a holiday on Sunday anyway?
Yeah. Sunday's a holiday all by itself already. Let's move Easter to Monday.
By the way, since we've accepted taking this show as amateur hour, I just want to make another meta commentary that I checked with the phone stuff before the show, and I confirmed that yes, indeed, there actually is a technical issue that prevents people on the phone from hearing us when they're talking. So every time you hear Matt going, hang on, hang on, hang on, it doesn't mean that the person is deliberately ignoring him necessarily. It actually does mean that they can't hear him even when he's shouting. The sound actually cuts out.
Yeah, so I think one of the things we're going to start doing is letting everybody know at the start of the show, start making judicious use of the hold button just so that the conversation can flow as well as possible.
Right, and we've got some people looking at it and maybe trying to fix it, but I don't know.
And we've confirmed that Marjo actually did win the Academy Award for Best Documentary.
Okay.
For the year it ran, so we got
Great.
more creationist tomfoolery.
More
and
bad
huckstery.
creationist arguments. So we got a theory of chance. Let's see. I don't know if this one is that great, but anytime you hear somebody say that evolution says we come from monkeys,
Oh gosh.
no, it doesn't. And this is actually in the same category as somebody saying, why, if evolution were true, then you would see a cat giving birth to a dog, right?
I'm going to Photoshop that one day just to have around for April Fools and
Oh,
stuff.
that sounds disgusting. But no, actually, if a cat ever did give birth to a dog, it would completely stump evolutionists.
Yeah.
Because a cat and a dog are already separately evolved lineages. They came from a common ancestor, which is mammals, and specifically carnivores. You know those classifications you learned in biology class when you were a kid, even if you had one of those teachers who didn't want to teach evolution, they still taught like the scientific classification of things. And that's more than just convenient categories to put things in. That's actually, that actually represents the evolutionary history of things. So for instance, cats and dogs are both in this carnivora class, which came from the earliest carnivore, which was sort of like a cat and sort of like a dog. And carnivora was in turn a mammal, which shares the branch with primates. And the earliest primate was a much smaller animal that looked like neither a human nor a monkey. That primate class split off. One branch went towards monkeys and one branch went towards humans. And so my point is they have a common lineage, but it doesn't say that your grandfather was a monkey or even your great-great-great-great-great-grandfather. It says that somewhere back there was a primate ancestor out of which came humans and monkeys. And then earlier than that, there was the earliest mammal, which gave birth to both the carnivora line and the primate line.
And interestingly, I don't know how many other people listen to NPR. They had a program called Fresh Air. Mm-hmm. And last week on Wednesday, I believe, they had Richard Dawkins on. And on Thursday, they had Francis Collins on. Now, for a lot of people who equate evolution with atheism or think that evolution eliminates, the God claims, Francis Collins was the head of the Human Genome Project. He's an evangelical Christian, and he accepts evolution, and not just evolution in the way that perhaps Michael Behe might accept it. He accepts common ancestry of all living things. And he says that the DNA evidence is far stronger than even the fossil record, that it becomes blatantly obvious to anybody who understands the DNA evidence that common ancestry is simply a fact. And this is, he mentioned this on the program Thursday on Fresh Air. So I don't know how much more we can, they try to play up the idea that there's controversy or scientists are objecting to this, and you've got plenty of Christians who just matter-of-factly accept evolution and relegate God to some kind of metaphysical layer that doesn't really mess that much with, life. But I happen to think he's wrong on that issue, but I'm happy that there's an eminent scientist who's in their camp who's willing to be honest and say, hey, look, when we look at the DNA evidence, it's blatantly obvious to anybody who understands it that there's common ancestry here. It's just that simple.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Okay. Sorry. Where was it?
I don't know, but do the moon dust one.
The moon dust one? Well,
Just
see,
'cause
that's in a whole different category because then we're getting into young Earth arguments, and I haven't quite finished generic evolution arguments. But let me talk about young Earth creationism. Young Earth creationism is now, I think, to the point where most people who are young Earth creationists are at least have the good grace to be embarrassed about it. So a lot of people who really are young Earth creationists, and when I say young, I mean like the Earth is on the order of thousands of years old instead of billions. Real young Earth creationists often will hedge and not talk. If you ask them directly, how old do you think the Earth is? They say, well, I think that's open to scientific investigation, 6,000 years. But often you'll find people blustering about how they really don't want to say how old they think the Earth is. It's not relevant. Now, in the old days, when it was hipper to be a young Earth creationist, the reason that young Earth arguments are used against evolution so often is because evolution has happened over the course of billions of years.
It can't work without that lengthy timeline.
Right. It's undeniable. Now, we don't believe that the Earth is billions of years old because we want to believe in evolution. Basically, the age of the Earth was very well established by geologists and cosmologists, and that is totally unrelated to how evolution works. But it's undeniable that if you want to believe in evolution or accept it as the scientific consensus, then it doesn't happen in thousands of years.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny because young Earth creationists actually believe in this Noah's Ark story where there were a limited number of animals on the Ark, and if there was one of every species represented, then there would be tens of millions of species on the Ark. And in order to not have to admit that that's ridiculous, they say, oh, well, there was only one of each kind.
Yeah.
Or
one
two
dog
of
kind.
each kind. Right.
Yeah.
So apparently, I don't know if wolves are the same kind as dogs, but apparently what they want us to believe is that chihuahuas and wolves both evolved in the incredibly rapid time that since Noah's Ark happened.
Speaking of dogs and young Earth creationists,
yes,
it's interesting. Most young Earth creationists assert that the Earth is 6,000 to 10,000 years old,
right,
with 10,000 at the outside edge of that. And it'd be interesting for a young Earth creationist to explain then how we domesticated dogs about 11 to 12,000 years ago. Mm-hmm. We know that's the case. I mean, it's just, I have a hard time with young Earth creationists because every single argument that they bring up is so mind-numbingly absurd.
Right, like the moon dust argument.
Like the moon dust argument.
The moon dust argument is basically, I'll try to be quick about this because we're already running out of time. An hour just isn't enough. But anyway, the claim is based on measured rates of planetary dust accumulation, there's just too little moon dust for an old moon, meaning more than a few thousand years old. In fact, before the moon landings, there was considerable fear that the astronauts would sink in the dust because the dust from all the space dust landing on the moon would be so thick that it would just be this huge pile of dust that people would sink in. And I don't want to get into this too much, but that was based on one calculation. It was based on a completely wrong estimate of of what the volume of dust falling on the moon is. It's been acknowledged as a bad calculation. It's been shown why it was a bad calculation, and that is so widely discredited that even sites like Answers in Genesis now have a post saying, please stop using this argument. You're making us look bad.
Yeah.
But
and
people do it anyway.
There's a bunch of other arguments there. If you go to answersingenesis.org, is it? Or
I don't know.
I'm not sure.
I would go to talkorigins.org and look for
Talkorigins.org.
moon dust, because you'll find links there.
Yeah, they'll find a list to the Answers in Genesis site with a list of arguments that they feel that creationists shouldn't use. So let's go out and try and take some calls. We've got about 6 or 8 minutes left.
You guys will have to be quick, though.
So, Steve, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I just want to make a comment about the argument people make about coming from monkeys, which I agree. I mean, I know that's not what evolution says. But just looking at that argument, it is, first of all, people take it as insulting somehow to be claimed that you came from a monkey, or you could name other animals. And even though it's not true that evolution says you come from a monkey, evolution does say you came from some creature that was not a human.
Yeah.
Right, and
But
eventually
you could-
protoplasm.
So you could say that it's equally insulting. It's just we don't have a name for that creature.
Yeah, I've seen Kent Hovind talk about, the protoplasm, the goo.
Goo to you
Oh, you
by
came
way of
from
the zoo.
goo. You came from goo. Who wants to come from goo? I don't care what you want to come from. The fact of the matter is that once upon a time you were goo, and you should just be happy that you're entering the timeline at a time when, hey, we're intelligent and we have this modern civilized world, and we're not still crawling around in the guck looking
Right.
for whatever.
And people who are squeamish about coming from goo probably shouldn't study the anatomy of how actually babies are born.
Yeah.
Because,
That's right. But it's just, to me, it's an emotional argument. Besides being kind of wrong, the right part about it is you came from something, but the emotion that's a bad thing and ridiculous and terrible. I mean, why is that so bad?
Yeah.
And there's nothing. I don't understand why that is such a knee-jerk thing that gets everybody excited.
Supposedly the American dream is to come from very humble beginnings and work your way up by the virtue of your own bootstraps or whatever metaphor, and become really great on your own volition. So, I mean, there's evolution.
But I guess evolution doesn't come from volition. It's just we're lucky.
That's true.
Yeah.
So I guess we can't take credit for it. So that's too
Yeah,
bad.
that's why I don't feel
Anyway,
particularly proud about it, but I'm certainly happy to be in this situation.
I am very happy also. Thank
Yeah.
you for having a good show.
Thanks a lot, Steve.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We're going to try and, the phone line's filled up within the last couple of minutes of the show, go figure. So we'll try and get through these as quick as we can.
And I do want to wrap up at the end, so leave me a couple of
Well,
minutes.
I've got a special segment at the end. So.
Oh.
Anyway, Sean, how you doing?
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
I was just calling to comment on how raised in a fairly liberal church, how not all Christians necessarily reject the doctrine of evolution.
Oh,
Yeah,
we know.
I made that point just a couple minutes ago.
Most
Yeah.
Christians do actually
And,
accept evolution.
Well, I mean, even then, it seems like what their beliefs come from, like an Italian, and not completely understanding it. How could possibly, what point do you define human? Do you need to seek redemption from God? What point, I know, I mean, like for animals, for Christians, think animals have to obey Ten Commandments or God's laws, but what point evolution they define? I mean, it seems like you don't fully understand what evolution entails as how slowly the process took place and how different level it is to become human.
Like, what was the first animal to have a soul, I guess, would
Yeah,
be a
exactly.
question that would
Yeah.
be interesting to Christians, but not to us, because we don't believe in souls.
Yeah.
So, is that it?
Is that it?
Yes, sir. You said
Okay.
Okay, cool. Thanks a lot, Sean.
Thank you for
Appreciate
calling.
it. We got, there we go.
I guess this will be the last call.
We're going to take one last call. Joe, how you doing?
I'm doing very well. Hey, just a quick note, fellow atheist here. You spoke about dogs going from wolf to chihuahua.
Right.
They actually probably could go from wolf to chihuahua in just
it probably did.
1,000 years.
Well,
Yeah.
certainly did.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe a different animal would be good.
No, what we're saying is that in the time span, sure, you're right. By artificial selection, you might be able to do it in that time span.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think, however, that the evidence points to a much longer time span being responsible for that change. But yeah.
Certainly.
Anyway, thanks a lot for calling, Joe. Appreciate it.
Right. I mean, certainly the time that people have been breeding dogs, we've gotten both St. Bernards and Chihuahuas.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure how long that's taken. So anyway, let me wrap up. I just wanted to mention real quickly the second law of thermodynamics, which I always find hilarious because the second law of thermodynamics is something everybody learns in like high school science classes. And apparently creationists think that when they mention the second law of thermodynamics, all the scientists in the world who think evolution is correct will suddenly slap their foreheads and go, "Oh, we forgot there was a second law of thermodynamics. Unbelievable. Well, I guess we'll pack up and go home." And that kind of, I don't have time to talk about why the second law of thermodynamics argument is silly, but I'll just wrap up by saying that people believe that there's a magic bullet out there that can just stop evolution in its tracks. People who have never studied science seem to think that they've come up with these great original ideas that are all over the internet that scientists just haven't taken into account. And science really just doesn't work like that. There's a lot of verification and foundation building before a theory like evolution gets to the point where it's widely accepted by almost everybody. And that, I guess, wraps it up for bad creationist arguments.
Okay.
Go, Matt.
Thanks a lot to the people who managed to tune in today despite the preemption. We'll be back again next week, which I've just been informed is Easter. Evidently, there's some kind of Christian holiday or something going on. A couple
Like
quick
we didn't
announcements.
remember when there was going to be a Super Bowl on.
Oh, I remembered when they just not in advance. We've got elections for the ACA for all members coming up in May. There's a very strong likelihood that we'll have a special guest also in May for both this show and for the nonprofit. So stay tuned for announcements along those lines. And May 3rd is the National Day of Prayer, which means it's also the National Day of Reason, and we'll be down at the Capitol for that. As nobody answered last week's challenge about Elisha and the bears. Oh yes, if you're watching, we're going to be going to Threadgills here shortly, down on Riverside. Since nobody answered last week's challenge, I'm not even sure we should continue doing this. So instead of giving you a difficult moral dilemma or a direct contradiction, I'd like for all the Christians to actually pick up their Bibles and read 1 Corinthians chapter 6 and explain to me that if you're not supposed to sue each other, how come a country with 75 to 80% Christian population is plagued by so many ridiculous, frivolous lawsuits? There's a direct order in here for you not to sue each other, and yet you're doing it all the time, you hypocrites. So please explain to me how that is, and maybe you can dig in and give me a little dose of some extra theology in there as well. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.
Bye.